So my reviews for the next couple of weeks are going to take a slightly different form. I've broken my arm, as you can probably tell by this massive sling, and typing on the laptop's not the easiest of things, so I've decided for now I'm going to do some little video blogs about the movies I've seen, because I want to keep updated with what I've seen. I want to keep everything fresh. I don't want to miss anything out, but typing is going to take too long, and they'll take too long to come up, so this anonymous review is already late, but hopefully you'll enjoy what I have to say, and as ever, any retweets, any comments, anything would be amazing. I have to admit, I went into Anonymous and I wasn't feeling particularly hopeful. I'd seen some footage back at Empire Big Screen in London, and we'd seen quite a lot, and it was, you know, you had clip after clip, and I think everyone was getting a bit bored, and they were like, this just doesn't really seem to be giving us enough of the story. Doesn't look too exciting, but it was different for Roland Emmerich. It was definitely different, you know, it wasn't apocalyptic, and everyone was quite interested to see what would happen. But at that moment in time, it didn't seem to really grab us. But this was a good thing, because actually I was quite pleasantly surprised with Anonymous. Not as much as, say, I was when I saw The Hangover 2, and it was better than I thought because of the bad critic reception, but let's just say it was better than The Three Musketeers, and for me, that was a godsend. Anonymous is so far removed from anything that Roland Emmerich has done. It's not apocalyptic at all, and I kept having to remind myself, having to keep pinching myself to remind myself that this was one of his films. There's no earthquakes, there's no tidal waves, there's no feral pack of wolves, you know, you haven't got Jake Gyllenhaal and Emmy Rossum running away from natural disasters. There's nothing like that, and it's really, really interesting to see how Roland Emmerich actually can handle all these very different genres, because Anonymous does have lots of different bits within it, although it's a loose biopic. I mean, people need to know this is not fact. Anonymous is not fact. It's based on an idea that Edward de Vere could be the man behind Shakespeare. But there's comedy, there's drama, it's very family-centric in parts. There's a lot about the monarchy, there is quite a bit of history, and actually this is very interesting as well with Emmerich. This script is actually quite engaging compared to his other films where everything's, you know, quite staged and there's not a lot of dialogue. It's more about the action and the effects. It's nice to have this different addition to his back catalogue now, and it definitely shows that he is able to do it. I just wish that it had maybe stuck to one set genre throughout rather than being comedy drama, and it just didn't seem to be very linear towards the end, unfortunately. Now, the whole idea of Shakespeare not being the man behind the writing has been going around for ages. There's always conspiracies, you know, who was it? Was it Ben Jonson, etc, etc, or was there a group of people behind it? And it's a very controversial point, and for those who aren't British, over here at the moment we've had a little bit of controversy. Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare was born, they've been protesting because it's all very sacred to them. It's all been seen as sacrilege that Roland Emmerich, this German man, would come along and he'd even consider disturbing the peace with the Shakespeare myth, as it were. But I think he handles the intrigue very well, and Rhys Ifans especially, he really does bring a very, very human performance here. It's something that I haven't really seen from him, and I was very, very intrigued when I knew that he was taking this role. To be honest, he really is the only main serious point throughout the film. Everyone else has an aspect of comedy at least. Even Vanessa Redgrave and Jodie Richardson playing Queen Elizabeth, you know, their respective different ages, they have some comedy. Jamie Campbell-Bower, who plays a young Edward, he has little flashes every now and again, but Rhys Ifans is very, very serious throughout, and he's like this paternal figure throughout, and he does play a bit of a martyr. I think he handles it well. There is some script issues at points. There's a bit about him saying how the voices talk to me, and you can, it's in a scene with Helen Baxendale, and you can, it just doesn't work, it jars, you can just feel him saying it, and it doesn't work, and even he doesn't seem to believe it too well. But apart from that, I think, you know, he works really well through it, and some people have said he suffers through it. I think that's a bit harsh. I think he's done the very, very best he could with this script, with this crazy, you know, part that's been given to him. The fact is, he's a very solitary character as well. There's only one or two people that he really, really does interact with, Francisco being one of them, who's absolutely lovely. Love Francisco. He's a brilliant little character. But everyone else has their groups. Rafe Spall, who plays Will Shakespeare, he has his group. He has Ben Jonson, he has Kit, Christopher Marlowe, he has all these friends, and it becomes more of an ensemble piece. And I think for Rhys Ifans, he's very solitary, and he does seem like he's on his own throughout this film. It's really hard to describe, but this is what I was saying about these different elements of the film. They don't seem to gel too well, and as I said, Rhys has done the best he can, but unfortunately that's something where I think for future films, and Emmerich's obviously shown he can handle these different genres. Hopefully he'll either go for ensemble pieces, or he can do a big drama based on one person and their family, because I think if he took those two separate elements of the film and made them separate films, they'd be great, if that makes any sense. Rafe Spall obviously has had an absolute whale of a time doing this. I've really enjoyed watching him. He's, you know, Timothy Spall, his father, is an absolutely fantastic character actor. I mean, people know him from Harry Potter, you know, overseas. If you know, for Britain, we know him really, really well. He's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful actor. But Rafe, for me, was the best thing about One Day with Anne Hathaway and Jim Sturgis. And again, here, he's just absolutely in his element. He sounds like James Corden a little bit, but, you know, he literally milks every second of this performance, but it works. It absolutely works as him, as Will Shakespeare. And I totally identify with that character, the fact that if this was him and he had this opportunity to be this massive person when all he was an actor who never got the main roles, then I think he's done a brilliant job. Vanessa Redgrave and Jodie Richardson, obviously real life mother and daughter, playing the same character here in Queen Elizabeth. They work very well. Redgrave especially has a few moments where she's quite childlike, and it's very endearing and very interesting to watch her act like that, and it really does make you realise, for me for the first time, quite how similar Jolie and Vanessa do look, and that casting's fantastic. And Jolie's very playful, there's a romantic element, just doesn't give anything away because we see it in the trailer, romantic element with Jamie Campbell-Bower, the younger Edward, and it's interesting to see how that develops. Unfortunately, she has to leave at some point. She leaves, and to say too much would be to give too much away, but the film does unfortunately seem to get a bit silly after that, and any linear sort of quality it did have towards the beginning is lost. But I still say it's a fairly solid film, and as I said, The Three Musketeers was such a nightmare for me the other week. Emmerich's made me quite happy. There's a great little double act in Xavier Samuel, who most of you will know, well, to be honest, hasn't done much else apart from be in Eclipse, the third Twilight film. He played Riley, and I personally think he was the best thing in Eclipse. I didn't even recognise him in Anonymous. He's growing up, and I think he's really going to be one to watch. He was very engaging, and his relationship with Sam Reed, who, for me, is an absolute cross between Robert Webb and Freddie Fox, who, ironically, we saw in The Three Musketeers. The two of them as Xavier Samuel as the Earl of Southampton, and Robert Webb and Sam Reed as the Earl of Essex, they work very, very well together. Again, they're serious, they're not particularly comic. Earl of Southampton is one of the few characters that Rhys Ifans does get to interact with, and they've got very, very good little bonds there that you learn a lot about. They've got a great little friendship there. I just think the two of them really did stand out. They had a very genuine friendship, and they're absolutely dedicated to Queen and country, and for me they were possibly the only real believable part of the story. I know it's not meant to be real, I know it's based on the time. Kit Marlowe, I mean, he wasn't even, the times he was alive in this film aren't actually quite right with how he was alive in real life, but we'll let Emmerich off. But after all, this is a film about conspiracy, about myth, about hidden reason and forbidden things, and two people who definitely really, really are very, very big on the Shakespeare myth are Mark Rylance and Derek Jacobi. Sir Derek Jacobi. Mark Rylance, he did a one-man show actually, which I had the privilege of seeing a few years ago at the Chichester Festival Theatre, and it was called I Am Shakespeare, and the whole point of it was saying, who is Shakespeare? And was it Francis Bacon? Was it Edward de Vere? You know, was it Ben Jonson? And it's absolutely fascinating. And having him as the main actor throughout is such an inspired idea. I mean, he's been in films like The Other Boleyn Girl. He played the Boleyn's father, but he honestly is one of our best thespians. He's an absolutely cliche. He's captivating. You cannot take your eyes off him. Derek's speeches at the beginning and the end are beautiful, because we're introduced in modern day. The film starts in modern day and ends in present day, and you know, he delivers the lines to us. He delivers these Shakespearean lines, and straight away for me, that was what captured me. And I think that was a brilliant idea from Emmerich. Get these Shakespearean actors who are also conspiracy theorists. You know, they are interested. They are at the forefront of potential conspiracies, and have them headline the film, because it just adds a real authenticity to it. Absolutely. And for me, the best discovery of the film actually was a guy called Alex Hassel. He went to Central School of Speech and Drama, and he's been working with the RSC, I believe, the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he plays sort of, I guess, the guy that Will Shakespeare kind of wishes he was. He's the main actor. He gets the best parts, like Romeo, you know, King Henry. He, for me personally, is the best part of the film. I would go and see the film again for him, possibly. He's absolutely fantastic. There's one scene in particular which you know, quite a few of you may have seen clips for because they have been doing the rounds, and it's when he's playing King Henry. I believe it's King Henry IV, the play. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he just gets amongst the groundlings, and they just reach out for him, and it's really quite moving. And I possibly had a tear come to my eye. But again, this use of real Shakespearean actors, Emmerich deciding to be authentic about it and really going for that, really is fantastic. The only other main person to talk about really is Ben Jonson, who, I mean, some could argue possibly is the main character in this. I mean, after Edward. I mean, more so than Shakespeare. He's the one who throughout time has been sidelined by Shakespeare's writing. I mean, he's obviously a fantastic and well-respected playwright in his own right, and poet, but he's never going to be Shakespeare. Now, Sebastian Armesto, who plays him, who, honestly, he's an absolute dead ringer for Luke Evans. Throughout the whole, it's all these Three Musketeers parallels, but throughout the whole film, I just kept thinking this is Luke Evans' twin. They're very similar, very similar. He's an interesting one to watch. He's, unfortunately, he does suffer because towards the end he starts to become sort of a caricature, and where Rafe Spall is so overpowering, so, you know, with his comedy, his comic timing, and actually he does become quite twisted towards the end, Will Shakespeare. Unfortunately, Jonson becomes a bit of a caricature. It becomes a little bit uncomfortable. But towards the beginning, he's the first character we're introduced to after Derek Jacobi has been delivering us the prologue. He is very human. It's very interesting watching his journey. His friend Kit Marlowe, I'm sorry, the guy's really annoying. I can't stand him. I don't think he was really needed, actually. His other friends are good fun, but Kit Marlowe wasn't needed. I wasn't a fan of that. But Armesto, Jonson, he struggles, but I think the first half he does really well, but I just think it's the way he's written. I think we'll see what else Armesto's in. He's obviously very capable. He's very fun to watch. He's very easy to engage with, in the same way Luke Evans is, actually. But yeah, unfortunately I just think that's the way it's been written towards the end. So ultimately, Anonymous is a very interesting film. If you love your Shakespeare, go and see it. I am a massive Shakespeare fan. You know, I know it's not a biopic, particularly, it's just an idea, and I still find it fascinating because even though for me, I guess I've always believed there is a Shakespeare, it's still really interesting, and anyone who loves any sort of theatre should go and see it. But saying that, there's action in it, it's great for men, it's great for women, because there is love aspects to it. Emmerich also manages to fit in a few twists and turns I didn't see coming, and that also made me realise that there's more to this director than 10,000 BC and all the apocalyptic films he loves to shoot. Unfortunately, the graphics do come across quite computery at times when you're looking at the globe, but to be honest, I kept thinking, well, we've been projected this on a stage, we're kind of following this play that Derek Jacobi's put on, so in a way, all the world's a stage, to quote Shakespeare. It didn't seem to really matter. It wasn't bad graphics, it just was something that did stick out, and especially, you know, he's so well known, his signature style is amazing graphics. It just seemed to jar a little bit. Anonymous is not Emmerich's signature style whatsoever, and I think this is a very big and bold move for the director. It's obviously something he's passionate about. It's obviously something he wants to get away from. He wants to not be pigeonholed anymore. He wants to go out and do, you know, more interesting projects, and he's obviously assembled a fantastic cast here, so people are really willing to work for him. I mean, we know he draws massive box office bucks with his films, even if they're critical flops a lot of the time. I didn't hate it at all. I thought it was, as I said, very fascinating. Unfortunately, towards the end, seems to fall apart a little bit. Said it's my signature style. He did manage to get a few little slow-mo bits in there in parts which were, you know, totally unnecessary, but Emmerich showed his capabilities here, and I think it's very exciting, and we'll see what else he has to offer in this sort of vein. So Anonymous gets 3 out of 5 for me.